She was young, beautiful, and hopelessly in love. Tamia Rochelle Simmons believed she had finally found the kind of love that could rewrite her tragic past. A man who promised her a future, a family, a purpose. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that she had walked straight into a nightmare. He was older, charming, and experienced in all the ways she wasn't. He knew exactly what to say, exactly how to make her feel special. But behind the sweet words and empty promises lurked something far darker. A man who didn't love her. A man who didn't need her, except for what she could give him. The warning signs were there. The control, the manipulation, the violence. But by the time Tamia realized the truth, it was too late. She was trapped, suffocating under the weight of a man who took everything from her, her money, her freedom, her body, her soul. And when she finally reached her breaking point, the young woman who had once been full of promise did the unthinkable. One February night, as the world outside carried on like nothing was wrong, something inside Tamia snapped. The pain, the betrayal, the years of suffering, everything boiled over into one final, horrifying act. By the time it was over, there was no turning back. Blood stained the walls, the screams had faded, and the man who had once controlled her every move lay motionless in their bed. But what really happened that night? Was this an act of cold-blooded murder? Or was it the desperate retaliation of a woman pushed to her absolute limit? How does a young woman, full of promise, end up committing such a gruesome crime? What drives someone from love to murder? This is the tragic story of Tamia Rochelle Simmons, a girl who gave everything for a man who saw her as nothing more than a pawn. Before we dive into this shocking case, like this video and subscribe for more chilling tales of love, lies, and betrayal. 17 years old Tamia Rochelle Simmons was born into a world of heartbreak long before she ever knew what love was. Her mother, a woman she would never truly remember, lost her battle to addiction when Tamia was just a toddler. With no father in sight, she was raised by the only person who would take her in, her devout and deeply religious grandmother, Miss Geraldine. Miss Geraldine did everything she could to shield Tamia from the same fate that had stolen her mother. Church every Sunday, strict curfews, no boys, no parties, no distractions from the path of righteousness. In her grandmother's eyes, the world outside their small, two-bedroom apartment was dangerous, full of sin and temptation, and it was her duty to make sure Tamia never got lost in it. But as Tamia grew older, she didn't see her grandmother's rules as protection. She saw them as a cage. While other girls at school gossiped about their boyfriends, went on dates, and posted pictures from weekend outings, Tamia only had bedtime prayers and Bible verses. She wanted more. She wanted love. Not the kind that came from the pulpit or the pages of scripture, but the kind that made her feel alive, wanted, chosen. So when she met Romello Carter, he was everything she had been waiting for. He was older, 34 years old. Confident. Smooth-talking. A man who had lived a life she had only seen in movies. He told her she was beautiful, that she was different from other girls, that she had a good heart and he could see it. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. No one had ever made her feel like she mattered. But Romello was no Prince Charming. He was a convicted felon, in and out of jail since his early 20s, with a rap sheet that told a much darker story: assault, fraud, drug possession, and a trail of broken women left in his wake. He already had 4 kids by 4 different women, but that didn't stop him from weaving a fairy tale just for Tamia. He love-bombed her, texting her every morning, calling her his queen, telling her he was going to give her the life she deserved. He took her places she had never been, made her feel like a woman, like she belonged to someone. And when her grandmother warned her, begged her to walk away, she refused to listen. In her mind, Miss Geraldine just didn't understand. She didn't know what it was like to finally be loved. Within months, Tamia was pregnant with his 5th child. Those who knew her were stunned. A quiet, church-going girl pregnant by a man twice her age. The whispers spread quickly, at school, at church, even in her own neighborhood. Some called her naive, others pitied her. But the ones who knew Romello best, his other baby mamas, they didn't mince words. She's just another one, they said. Another girl tricked by his charm. Another girl who believed she would be the one to change him. Another girl about to learn the hard way that Romello Carter didn't do love, he did control. And by the time Tamia realized that for herself, it was far too late. At first, Tamia told herself it was just a rough patch. That every relationship had struggles. That once the baby came, Romello would step up and be the man he promised to be. But reality hit fast. And it hit hard. By the time she was 4 months pregnant, she had dropped out of school. She told people it was her choice, that she wanted to focus on her growing family. But the truth? The truth was Romello told her she didn't need school. That her time was better spent taking care of him. She worked 2 jobs, morning shifts at a fast food restaurant, overnight shifts cleaning offices, barely getting any sleep, just trying to keep a roof over their heads. And while she was breaking her back, Romello was sitting at home, playing video games, smoking, doing nothing. He had no job, no ambition, no plan, except for making sure she paid for everything. The rent, the groceries, the bills, everything was in her name. Because that's how he wanted it. That's how he kept her trapped. And when the money ran out, that's when the real nightmare began. It started with words. Harsh, cruel words that cut her down until she barely recognized herself. You're nothing without me. You're lucky I even deal with you. You're too stupid to survive without me. Then came the rules: don't question him, don't look at other men, don't complain. If she did, he reminded her, I'm the man of the house. You don't speak unless I say so. Then came the bruises. The first time he hit her, she swore it would never happen again. He apologized. He cried. He held her and told her she just made him so mad sometimes, that if she would just listen, he wouldn't have to be this way. And she believed him. She had to believe him. But the next time was worse. And the time after that, even worse. Every time she tried to fight back, he broke her down again. If she cried, he told her to stop acting weak. If she threatened to leave, he laughed in her face. And go where? Who's gonna take in a dumb little dropout with a baby on the way? She stopped calling her grandmother. Stopped seeing her friends. Stopped being herself. The happy, hopeful girl who once believed in love was disappearing, replaced by someone who only existed to survive the next day. But still, she held on. Because she loved him. Because she thought if she just loved him enough, he would finally change. That one day, he would see how much she had given up for him and become the man she had dreamed of. But Romello Carter didn't change. And the deeper she fell into his trap, the harder it became to escape. Tamia thought having their daughter would change things. That maybe, just maybe, Romello would finally step up. Be a father. Be the man she had fought so hard to believe in. But instead, the walls of her prison closed in tighter. Zara was barely a few days old when Romello started using her as another way to control Tamia. He'd disappear for days, then show up unannounced, demanding to see his child. If she refused, he'd remind her who had the power. You think you're gonna take my kid? You think anyone's gonna believe you over me? She wasn't just trapped anymore. She was drowning. And the worst part? She still held on to hope. Because despite the bruises, the lies, the endless cycle of manipulation, she wanted to believe that the man she fell in love with was still in there somewhere. That if she loved him enough, if she gave him just a little more time, he would change. But that illusion shattered the night she came home early. Tamia had worked a double shift, exhausted beyond belief, her feet aching, her mind numb. All she wanted was to crawl into bed next to the man she had sacrificed everything for and hold her daughter. Instead, she opened the door to a nightmare. At first, she thought she was hearing things. The soft moans, the bed creaking. Maybe she was just tired. Maybe her mind was playing tricks on her. But when she stepped into the bedroom, the truth was laid out in front of her, Romello, naked, tangled in the sheets with another woman. Not just any woman. Nyla. His third baby mama. And their newborn daughter. Zara. She was right there, just a few feet away, in her crib, as if none of it mattered. For a moment, time stopped. Then everything exploded. Tamia screamed. She didn't even recognize her own voice. She saw red, felt her hands trembling, her body shaking with rage, betrayal, heartbreak. How could you? How could you do this to me? Romello? He didn't flinch. He didn't even care. He sat up, lazily pulling the sheet around his waist, and smirked. Man, calm the fuck down. And Nyla? She just laughed. Like it was funny. Like she was the one who didn't belong there. Before she could even process what was happening, Romello was in front of her. His hand wrapped around her throat, slamming her against the wall so hard she thought she heard something crack. The air left her lungs. And then, in the coldest voice she had ever heard, he said it. You ain't nothing but another dumb bitch I used for money. You're replaceable, Tamia. Replaceable. That word cut deeper than any punch he had ever thrown, deeper than any bruise he had ever left on her skin. She had given him everything. Her body. Her future. Her love. And he had never loved her back. Then he stepped back, grinning, completely unfazed, and shrugged. You can leave. But you ain't taking my kid with you. That was it. That was the moment something inside Tamia snapped. Tamia smiled. She cooked. She kissed her daughter goodnight. She played the role she had always played, the obedient girl, the devoted girlfriend, the mother who put everyone before herself. But inside? Inside, she was already gone. There was no more love. No more hope. No more waiting for Romello to change. Because now, she knew the truth. He would never let her go. And if she walked away without Zara, she would never see her daughter again. So she made a choice. A choice that had been building for months, buried beneath every bruise, every scar, every insult that had chipped away at her soul. And on a cold February night, she made her move. The apartment was silent. The only sound was the soft hum of the television in the living room, a late-night infomercial flickering on the screen. Romello was in bed, snoring, one arm thrown lazily over the pillow beside him. He had no idea. No idea that the girl he had broken, the girl he had humiliated, the girl he had turned into nothing, was standing just a few feet away, gripping the biggest knife from the kitchen. She stood there for what felt like forever. Staring. Thinking about every time he had hit her. Every time he had told her she was worthless. Every time he had laughed in her face, knowing she was too scared, too trapped, too helpless to ever fight back. Not tonight. Before she could talk herself out of it, she raised the knife. And plunged it into his chest. The sound was sickening. A deep, wet thunk as the blade sank into his flesh. Romello's eyes snapped open. His body jerked. His mouth opened in a silent scream, confusion and pain twisting his face. Tamia didn't stop. She pulled the knife out and stabbed him again. And again. And again. Romello fought. He thrashed, trying to push her off, but she was relentless. Those times she had been powerless, being his victim. Not tonight. Blood soaked the sheets. Splattered against the walls. Painted her hands, her face, the ceiling above them. By the time she stopped, her breath ragged, her arms aching, the knife slipping from her fingers. Romello was gone. His body was barely recognizable, shredded by 37 stab wounds. For the first time, the apartment was silent. Then, a sound. A gasp. She turned. And there, in the doorway, stood Romello's oldest son. Jamir. 11 years old. Eyes wide with horror. His tiny hands gripping the doorframe so hard his knuckles turned white. He had seen everything. Tamia opened her mouth, but the words felt foreign, like they didn't belong to her anymore. Go back to sleep. But Jamir didn't move. Didn't blink. And then, without a sound, he turned. And ran. Out of the bedroom. Through the apartment. Out the front door, his screams tearing through the night. The neighbors woke up. Lights flicked on. The sirens came next. When the police arrived, the scene inside the apartment was something out of a nightmare. Blood was everywhere, on the walls, the sheets, the ceiling. The body of Romello Carter lay motionless on the bed, his chest a mess of deep, gaping wounds. And in the middle of it all sat Tamia. She was eerily calm, rocking baby Zara in her arms, whispering over and over, "He thought I was stupid." The officers moved in cautiously, weapons drawn, unsure if she would lash out. But she didn't fight. She didn't run. When they pulled Zara from her arms and placed her in the hands of another officer, Tamia barely reacted. She simply held out her wrists, waiting for the handcuffs. Outside, blue and red lights flashed against the darkness of the early morning. Neighbors had gathered, whispering, pointing. A few of Romello's children stood among them, their faces streaked with tears, their small bodies trembling. Jamir, his oldest son, stood next to the neighbor he had run to for help. His lips were parted slightly, but no words came out. He was still in shock, still replaying the moment he walked into that room and saw his father dying. The officers ushered him into the back of a squad car, away from the crowd. Inside the police station, Tamia showed no emotion during her initial interrogation. She sat with her hands folded neatly in front of her, still wearing the blood-stained tank top and sweatpants from the night before. "Do you understand the charges against you?" an officer asked. She nodded. "Do you regret what you did?" Silence. Then, finally, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "I was supposed to die too." At trial, the courtroom was packed. Reporters, spectators, Romello's family, everyone wanted to see the young woman who had turned from a quiet, naive girl into a killer. The defense painted her as a battered woman, someone who had suffered years of emotional and physical torment before finally snapping. They spoke of the beatings, the manipulation, the night she walked in on Romello with Nyla while their baby lay just a few feet away. They told the jury she had been pushed past her breaking point. But the prosecution had another story to tell. They played the 911 call, the panicked voice of the neighbor who had taken Jamir in that night. "There's blood everywhere, the kids, oh my God," the kids saw everything. Jamir had run to them in the dead of night, his face streaked with tears, his hands shaking as he tried to explain what had happened. The operator's voice was calm, steady. "Is anyone hurt?" The neighbor's voice cracked. "He's dead. She killed him. Stabbed him over and over." The kids. A deep breath. A choked sob. The kids saw it all. The prosecution focused on the sheer brutality of the crime, 37 stab wounds, inflicted while Romello slept. They reminded the jury that whatever he had done, he hadn't deserved to be slaughtered like that. They pointed to his children, who would forever be haunted by the image of their father's body, torn apart by the woman they trusted. The jury deliberated for only 4 hours. When they returned, the verdict was swift. Guilty. The judge, unmoved by the defense's plea for leniency, handed down the harshest sentence possible. Life in prison. No parole. No second chances. Her dreams of freedom, of escaping Romello and building a better life for Zara, were gone. She had finally broken free of him. But at what cost? As the bailiff led Tamia out of the courtroom in shackles, the weight of what had just happened finally settled on her shoulders. The murmurs of the crowd blurred together, a low hum of judgment and pity. Cameras flashed. Reporters whispered into their microphones. Somewhere in the gallery, someone sniffled. Romello was gone, but somehow, Tamia had lost more than he ever did. She was the one in chains. She was the one who would spend the rest of her life in a prison cell, while the very people who had broken her walked free. And that was the final blow. The world had already made up its mind about her. Some saw her as a victim, a naive, broken girl who had been manipulated, beaten, and humiliated until she snapped. They believed she had suffered enough, that she was another tragic statistic in a world where men like Romello thrived and women like her paid the price. But others saw her as nothing more than a murderer. They saw the blood. The 37 stab wounds. The horror in the eyes of Romello's children as they stood frozen in that doorway, looking at what she had done. They didn't care what Romello had put her through. In their eyes, she had taken a father away from his kids, and nothing could justify that. Now, as she sat in a concrete cell, staring at the walls that would surround her for the rest of her life, the questions lingered. Could it have ended differently? What if someone had stepped in before she ever met Romello? What if someone had warned her in a way she would actually hear? What if, instead of love, she had found something real, something safe? And the most haunting question of all, how many other young girls were living the same story right now, trapped in toxic love, unable to escape until it was too late? Because for Tamia Simmons, there was no escaping now. Her story was over. This case is a heartbreaking reminder of how love, desperation, and abuse can lead to unimaginable tragedy. Tamia Simmons wasn't a monster. She wasn't born to kill. She was just a girl who wanted to be loved, who clung to the dream of a happy ending, even when everything around her was crumbling. But love, at least the kind she thought she had, cost her everything. Now, she will spend the rest of her life behind bars, while the world debates whether she was a victim who finally snapped or a cold-blooded murderer who went too far. What do you think? Could she have found another way out? Was she pushed to the edge, or did she cross a line she can never come back from? Let us know in the comments. If this story shocked you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more cases that explore the darkest intersections of love, lies, and betrayal.